RIBA's gold medal is the oldest architectural award in the world. It was first given in the middle of the 19th century by our first president, Earl de Grey, and it is essentially a celebration of the lifetime achievement of an individual or a collective for the work they have done. Royal Gold Medal is given by the Institute on behalf of the monarch. In this case, the monarch being King Charles III, it's the first time it's been given during his reign.
It was a real privilege, an honour in itself, to be asked to sit on the 2023 RIBA Honours Committee, where we award the Institute's honorary fellowships, but also the Royal Gold Medal. It's an incredible and quite intense day of discussion as we review international leaders in their field's work.
This year, the panel chose Yasmeen Lari. It was a unanimous choice. Of course, there was much discussion because there are always interesting candidates. Yasmeen Lari's had essentially two careers. She studied in the UK at what is now Oxford Brookes. She went back to Pakistan, where she became the first registered female architect, and she built up a successful commercial practice. And it's her second career that we are particularly celebrating. She retired from that practice and formed a foundation who began to work with distressed communities, often in emergency situations, to help them rebuild their lives. She's made the architecture the product of their self-help, their own self-build.
It was a long time ago, last century actually, and my father was finally made in charge of some very important development projects. And he thought that, there would be now young people who should come up and now design a different kind of a world, if you like, for the new country. It stayed in my mind to see that if I wanted to serve my country, that is the best way to do it, is to become an architect. Anybody who's first in any kind of field, you carry a lot of responsibility. I was elected president of the Institute of Architects Pakistan. I had the privilege of sifting out those who rightfully could be called architects and those who would not. And that was so important for the profession, because finally all the young people who graduated, wanted to enter the profession, they now had a chance. And then, of course, time came when I got these commissions for corporate sector buildings. And every opportunity actually is interesting because you can find ways to do something innovative if you want to. So this building, which is known as the Pakistan State Oil Head Office, I designed in the early 80s. It allowed me the opportunity to not only do something for the corporate client, but also do something for my city. Because every building of that kind, I felt, had to have a component of public well-being also, which meant that I had to have these urban spaces that could be used by general public. Well, my focus from sort of corporate, international kind of style of architecture shifted because in 2000 I thought, I was just now doing more of corporate sector stuff than anything else, and it was really becoming more or less of the same thing.
It's that transition from a carbon-intensive, kind of megalithic approach to architecture, and to starchitecture indeed, to this much more located, culturally rooted, environmentally and ecologically sensitive practice that makes her almost a paragon of the kind of conversion that practice internationally, architecture internationally, is going to have to make over the coming years and decades.
Was asked to become national advisor for UNESCO at the World Heritage Lahore Fort to try to save this very beautiful mirror-encrusting ceiling of the Sheesh Mahal. That gave me a chance to learn more about how to use lime, how to deal with very complex problems of conservation, and so on and so on. And then 2005, as we all know, this massive earthquake hit Pakistan. 80,000 lives were lost, 400,000 families were displaced. So I devised a system which relies on empowering people, not to treat them as victims. And there are certain principles that I try to promote. One is that I believe in 4 zeros. Zero carbon, so that we don't aggravate climate change. Zero cost to donor, which is zero donor now. Zero waste, and that leads to zero poverty. And I've seen it, I've done it, I've implemented it, and it works. And then I have some no's also. No to handouts, no to cement, and no to steel. Because these two are the most destructive materials for the environment.
It's been very clear we are the designers of the low carbon future. And Yasmeen Lari has been engaging in research into what the low carbon future might look like for the last 20 odd years. Zero carbon, zero waste. That's her driver. But the product, of course, is architecture. If we are going to build a low carbon future, it's absolutely essential that we make it one that is delightful and that enriches people's lives at all levels.
So I designed something, and I've learned about how to deal with earthquakes, how to make the structure resilient so that it won't be life-threatening, that it would stand up to seismic jolts, and started to say to people how they could build themselves. And then suddenly, there was this bamboo. I saw that we could build very fast structures with that, very quick ones. I had to make flat roofs, and we worked as to how we could have joists made out of bamboo, and we could test it by people standing on it. That was the best test. It worked. And as it happens, 2010, we had this massive flooding, right from north to south. We built several hundred of them in bamboo, and I believe they're still doing well. This was the first rudimentary way of doing it, with bamboo verticals, the supports, and then the cross bracing that I learned from my earthquake experience in the traditional buildings there. From 2010 now, consistently, I use nothing else, because bamboo is so resilient, such an amazing material, and it sequesters so much of carbon. It makes everything carbon neutral. So today, my main materials are bamboo, earth, and lime. You can have infinite number of possibilities, and they're so safe, and they are comparatively really inexpensive. And the beauty is that you can train people, and combined with their own skills, what they've had, it's a magic formula. As I was working later in Sindh, I decided to use the Chora roof, which is a conical roof, which is very popular. You can find it in Africa as well, I think, but certainly in our own deserts, that is so common. Also because the thatch itself and the roof is so ingeniously designed that the water never really enters the interior of the building. It just flows off. These are very strong structures, so the air movement is there through the thatch. That makes it so cool.
Yasmeen is a great advocate, I think, for human agency and human ability to be able to learn and to do. And the way she's done that, working with people with materials that are local, is for that place. And a lot of it is replicable and relevant elsewhere, but it is those local adaptations that are key. And some of the really wonderful qualities in materials like those that can be locally sourced, they are replenishable, they're understandable. You can predict sort of how they're going to behave in different circumstances depending on what the climate and the context are going to throw at them. They're also repairable, so if the thatch is wearing out, you can replace it. If some of the render's been worn away because there's been flood water, well, you can build it back up again.
All my projects, if you look at them, why they're successful? Because women were involved. If you look at my Pakistan Chula, which is now something like 100,000 have been done, which are self-built, earthen, no money is given to them. They do it themselves. My barefoot eco-entrepreneur who is trained, her job is to go and tell them what to do, and then housewife makes it.
तो मैंने गांव में सारी औरतें को इकट्ठे करके समझाई हूँ। फिर मैंने जाके चूल्हे की टेलिंग दी सारे को। फिर तो मैंने 40,000 चूल्हा बनवाया। हाँ, दबाया हो गया था, पौना कानूनी में वो घर बना था थोड़ा सा। सारे हमारा गांव वाले रोड पे चले गए थे। हमारे पौने में बने था, वो नहीं गए थे रोड पे, वो घर में बैठे थे। बहुत फर्क है, ये घर में से सैलाब से बचा है, ऊपर घर बनते हैं, मजबूत है।
I wanted to put up something in that area because this is really on the foothills of Makli, which is this fantastic World Heritage Site, the largest Muslim necropolis in the world, with some of the most beautiful structures that you can ever find anywhere. In stone, in brick, in glaze tiles, with patterns galore everywhere. I think we've conserved at least 5 ancient monuments in that necropolis. But I thought if I'm doing glaze tile on this fantastic monument for tourists and for, of course, for posterity, but why can't I teach the same thing to the poor? And so that's how the whole thing started. I designed this hangar-like structure to see whether we could do it in bamboo. It was an experimental building. And then we built this center so that poor could come in and they could be there. We started a lot of training programs. I wanted to try my holistic model. Gradually, it became a production center for a lot of terracotta work where women would come in. And it's an open kind of a place. Anybody can come and go. There are no doors. It had to be open for everybody. And the breeze just goes through because it is all open. And the roof has thatch, so it's cool. And it's a place where everybody can come and work in. And it became a center for training, for learning, and became really very important for us in many ways. And there are places now where we are promoting terracotta tiles. I designed it as an eco-enclave. It has been dubbed by our media as zero carbon street. It's a 400 feet long walking street. We've stopped all the traffic, and if you'll see, we've got this wonderful pavement made out of terracotta tiles, specially handcrafted by women who were once beggars. And that's where the connection is between my work with communities and also how craft can play such an important role. One of the important aspects was to really safeguard historic buildings. We have been able to do in this particular enclave. And then the forest, the greenery that is around, there was nothing here. And now the forests are flourishing. I've also got a lot of aquifer wells. A huge amount of water is just absorbed within the soil. Okay, we've shown that you can regenerate parts that are suffering from urban blight, which were totally lost cases.
How do we actually get to know the work and the careers of architects? How do we encounter their work and learn about it? Books and exhibitions continue to be very important to understanding architecture and placing it in context. Yasmeen Lari's work, as we argue, is part of global architecture history. It needs to be told through perspectives that focus on emancipation, dignity, decoloniality, and of course the environment. Her ways of working within international networks and local communities moves architecture forward to different futures. Her long-term dedication to staying with architecture for decades and not just delivering a product, an object, but a process that has a life of its own.
She has aesthetics, she has design, she has order, she has vision. So when you go to these villages where she's built these carbon-free shelters, bamboo shelters, you are amazed at the way they have been designed, planned, and just the general outlook. this has become more important today because the whole world is focused on having a better environment and making it carbon free. She was good at everything she did, and she was the apple of the eye of my parents. And it's incredible how she has evolved and what she has done today, achieving this great feat of having Royal Gold Medal as an award for what she is doing. But she is passionate about her work.
So I believe that this decision, and a very bold decision of the RBA and the committee, and the monarch himself, I guess, to show or to open up the profession in this way for architects to tell them, or to, that they should feel that now they do not have to any longer just work or design for the privileged or who will commission them, but they can now also serve humanity, and it will be as acceptable as anything else. I believe that this is something that is really quite revolutionary to change the mindsets of people who never thought that architects had a role to play in such endeavors. So that's something quite remarkable as I see it. So I would like young architects to become architectural and environmental activists, no longer just sitting back and accepting everything that comes to you. To champion causes using their design ability to prevent injustices. I think architecture can do that. And to become eco-warriors against climate change. They are in the best position to do that. They know the impact of climate change. And so, my young friends, I urge you to never stop dreaming, whatever the odds. Keep after what you want to do.
Good evening, friends, ladies and gentlemen. I bring you greetings from Pakistan. I'm deeply honored and feel so privileged to be among such an esteemed assembly of celebrated professionals in the hallowed halls of 66 Portland Place. It was its wonderful library that magically opened the world of architecture to young aspirants. It was a remarkable collection of architectural drawings and the thought of eminent personalities who traversed these corridors that was so inspirational to budding architects such as myself, a long time ago, of course. For me to be here today is the stuff of dreams. When President Simon Alford was kind enough to convey the message and told me that the recommendation of the committee could be finalized only with the consent of the monarch, of course I knew it was a great honor, and I conveyed as much. And I don't know if Simon remembers it, but my first thoughts were, oh my God, the committee and His Majesty himself might come under heavy criticism for taking this extraordinary decision. And but then, since the announcement, the outpouring of solidarity and empathy I have received from so many around the world. Distinguished professionals and budding architects, engineers and planners, reputed personalities and young people, and an overwhelming feeling of pride from within villages in my own country. Demonstrated that the award had recognized the changed direction needed for the profession of architecture. It is somewhat ironic, don't you think, that a person who today prides herself as the architect for the poorest of the poor would be bestowed with the highest honors in the profession, the Royal Gold Medal. Of course, during the 36 years of my life as a practicing architect, like every other architect, I had a lurking hope for an honor such as this. But once I adopted the path of the rough, uncharted waters of humanitarianism, I never imagined that I could ever be considered for this. For me, the RIBA's heavy gold medal is symbolic of the burden of responsibility that henceforth I must carry to serve humanity with greater drive and struggle for the rights of those who live on the margins, but are entitled to attain the best architectural services, design services, to lead a life of dignity. Having relinquished my ego some 23 years ago, as I gave up architecture at that time, and given up my pursuit for designing iconic megastructures in the service of the elite of my country, a time came when I decided to spend my life sitting at the doorstep of the barefoot millions and learning from ancient wisdom of the past generations in order to fashion an alternative architecture. Some would say non-architecture. Today, I design to fulfill the unmet needs of the vast majority and at the same time work out strategies to halt the misuse of the planet's resources. This award heralds a new direction for practicing architecture, where poverty and disparities, climate change and greenhouse gas emissions could no longer be ignored by professionals best trained to use their gift of design to give agency to the voiceless, particularly women, and help the most destitute attain a better quality of life. Architects can do that. It also declares that in a rapidly changing world, if the profession is to remain relevant to society, then the time for decolonization and democratization of architecture and its practice have arrived. I hope this award will legitimize low-tech, low-impact techniques based on locally sourced materials, expanding the canvas of architectural practice from design responses only for the select few to serving all of humanity. By this announcement, the RIBA have reassured young professionals that they may chart out new avenues for their work. At the same time, take heed of the exigencies of the planet, whether it is the decarbonization of the built environment or creating climate-resilient structures to avoid displacement, any kind of displacement. From now onwards, no longer should architects feel compelled to serve only the elite 1%, the privileged and the wealthy. Instead, serving humanity in general and those living at the bottom of the pyramid in particular could become the focus of their design. It is my hope that in the new world order, in which billions of people need design services to achieve a better quality of life, this will become uppermost for a large number of future architects. For the profession can no longer ignore the plight of millions of climate and conflict migrants and leave outcomes in the hands of those who continue to promote high carbon solutions. Would this highly coveted award help me to resettle the displaced millions as a result of the devastating Pakistan flood last year? By applying my low-cost, zero-carbon, zero-waste, self-built methodologies, would I be able to achieve the target of rehabilitating 1 million at a time until 3 million families are all housed? I believe this target would only be met if the Royal Medal helps to change the mindset of aid-giving agencies, international banks, donor governments, and the entire UN system itself. These agencies, state and non-state actors who are today engaged in humanitarian causes, must strive to give up the handouts and siloed systems boosted by the international colonial charity model. Instead, my hope is that they would adopt humanistic humanitarianism for empowering communities through capacity building and training, and help to meet at least some of the elusive 17 UNDP Sustainable Development Goals. We know that design is the basis for enabling millions to acquire a better quality of life. And through charity, not by charity, but by using it to provide dignity, ownership, and pride through every structure that will henceforth be built that will also tread lightly on the planet. Let us not forget the giants of our profession at this juncture. From the global south and global north, the Hassan Fatehis and John Turners of the world, who showed us the way towards creating humanistic architecture for the people working with the people. And as we strive to fashion just and inclusive environments, socially, ecologically, and culturally, let us remember the principles of secularity, degrowth, eco-urbanism, and barefoot social architecture. At this juncture, in order to confront the ecological challenge of the 21st century, let us be mindful of the value of heritage and tradition, and traditional urbanism in our work, from where we have learned in the past and, in my view, could continue learning. And to once again bring back the humanist values of Renaissance, compassion, solidarity, and benevolence, and the teachings of all great religions to have empathy with each other. For as we've learned through COVID-19 pandemic, we will be safe only if everybody is safe. Might I bring to the notice of this glittering gathering of the higher echelons that young aspirant architects, and they need assistance from all of us to pursue the goal of humanitarian or environmental initiatives. Might I be bold enough to suggest that schools of architecture, and I think some deans are sitting here, that it might be able to establish what I would call architectural incubators. Not the capitalist tech incubator, but for those architects wishing to implement humanistic and ecological projects. We need to help them, and universities have to play their part. A 2-year of support by universities and the corporate sector is all that might be needed for young architects to establish different kinds of design practices in pursuit of the unmet needs of communities and the exigencies of the environment. We know that legal practices have so significantly led in providing assistance to the needy through their pro bono wings. I applaud eminent architects and our IBA itself for having generously established foundations and scholarships for young architects. Might I hope that flourishing architectural practices to also establish pro bono wings where services to fulfill community needs or develop design imperatives for those who live on the margins could be provided, and young architects employed for this purpose who are paid as mainstream workers. So today, my grateful thanks to the Royal Institute of British Architects and His Majesty for bestowing this great honor to my country, my gender, and myself. Might I dream for my profession to be in the forefront of serving humanity, at the same time help stitch the frayed tapestry of the planet. Will you all help me in this mission? Thank you so much.